Out in the Utah desert, there is a secret almost nobody ever tells you about. In 40-degree heat, where life seems to have completely vanished, the United States government has been carrying out what sounds like a crazy experiment. They released hundreds of beavers into one of the driest deserts on Earth, a place with no water, no vegetation, nothing but dust and a failure scenario that looked certain to happen within just 48 hours. This was not simply a conservation project anymore. It felt more like a desperate gamble. And yet, only 6 months later, from NASA's monitoring center, infrared satellites passing over that barren land captured something shocking. Deep green streaks spreading at an unbelievable speed. Right in the middle of the gray desert, life was coming back in a way that almost looked miraculous. How could a rodent weighing 20 kilograms possibly reverse what seemed like the fixed laws of nature and accomplish a mission that human machines worth millions of dollars had failed at so badly? And even more importantly, why did the United States have to bet on something that sounded this absurd in the first place? The answer lies in a brutal reality. Utah is disappearing day by day. When the water pulls back, what remains is not fertile soil, but a layer of fine dust loaded with arsenic and heavy metals. All it takes is one strong gust of wind for that dust to get lifted into the air and spread across the region. Millions of people living around the lake would be the first to breathe it in. But even that is still not the worst part. The Colorado River, the water source that supports more than 40 million people, has just reached its lowest level in 100 years. 39% of its flow has disappeared, not temporarily, but with the risk of being lost permanently if things keep going the way they are now. The irony is that humans themselves helped create this disaster through their own misguided restoration efforts. For decades, we turned natural rivers into literal water highways. Engineers straightened the channels and built concrete canals to move water as fast as possible to cities and farmland. The result was that the water started flowing too fast, leaving it with no time to soak into the ground. Riverbeds got carved deeper and deeper like open scars. Groundwater levels dropped meter by meter, then tens of meters, and the riverbanks that were once green and fertile slowly turned into dusty desert wastelands. By the time that mistake was finally recognized, the cost of fixing it had already gone beyond any realistic limit. Just to restore 1 mile of river using heavy machinery, the United States government has to spend between $75,000 and $100,000. Meanwhile, in the western part of the country alone, there are more than 140,000 miles of severely damaged rivers. The total budget required is so massive that it is beyond the economic reach of any country in the world. Excavators, concrete, and complex engineering plans suddenly look completely helpless in the face of ecosystem collapse. While the best engineers have been forced to admit defeat, an army of beavers has quietly been doing the exact same restoration work at almost no cost at all. A concrete dam worth millions of dollars can hold back water, but it will never repair itself or adapt on its own to climate change. A beaver, on the other hand, that knows nothing but how to chew wood, actually can. So between giant excavators that burn through millions of dollars and a 20-kilogram rodent with razor-sharp front teeth, who would you trust more? That is the question you have to answer before seeing the astonishing result of the Utah project. When the beavers were released into the Utah desert, they were not building dams for fun. They were building them in order to survive. And that basic survival instinct unexpectedly triggered one of the most powerful hydrological chain reactions humanity has ever seen. To a beaver, water moving too fast means danger. Without a stable body of water, it cannot hide, it cannot feed, and it cannot protect its young. So, its one driving instinct is simple: slow the water down at any cost. At that point, the scientists are really only there to open the door. They use a simple method called beaver dam analogs, which means man-made structures that imitate beaver dams, by driving a few untreated wooden posts into the bed of a dry stream to create a minimal framework. And then something incredible happens. The moment the beavers detect that rough little structure, they take over immediately. They drag branches, mud, loose stones, and even roots, weaving them together layer by layer, sealing every crack with a level of precision no machine can copy. The first results show up faster than anyone expects. The speed of the water drops from around 10 kilometers per hour to less than 1 kilometer per hour. Instead of slicing through the stream bed like a blade, the water begins to slow down and stay in place. And once the water slows, the real miracle begins. The pressure no longer pushes only downstream. It gets forced sideways into the banks. Underground aquifers, those hidden reserves that had been dry for decades, begin to recharge again. Every beaver dam works like a giant battery charger for the earth. Real measurements from areas where beavers are present show that the amount of water stored in the soil can be up to 10 times higher than in places without them. They can even transform temporary creeks that once carried water for only a few short days after rainfall into permanent streams that keep flowing all year long. But how does this animal know exactly where to block and where to reinforce? Behavioral studies show that beavers are extremely sensitive to the sound of running water. Even a tiny leak that creates a faint trickling noise is immediately recognized as a system failure, and the beaver rushes to seal it. It works like a perfect natural algorithm. It does not need engineering drawings or high-performance computers, and yet it still reaches an almost absolute level of precision. This process goes on continuously, day and night, until the water flow becomes fully stable. Humans need months to design a dam. Beavers only need to listen. And that is where a major paradox starts to become obvious. The most advanced hydraulic systems created by humans operate according to fixed plans. Beavers, by contrast, adjust themselves in real time to even the smallest environmental changes. When the water level rises, they raise the dam. When the water level falls, they lower it. A credentialless engineer is managing a system that humanity still has not fully managed to replicate. During the recent record-breaking wildfire seasons in the western United States, when massive fires swept across the land and burned everything in their path, scientists recorded a very strange phenomenon. From the cockpit of firefighting aircraft, using infrared cameras, pilots saw something almost impossible to believe. In the middle of a sea of flames turning everything into ash, green islands were still standing untouched. Why could the fire not reach them? The answer is simple: water does not burn. The wetland zones created by beavers have become some of the toughest shields on the planet. By building dams, they do not just store water on the surface. They turn the whole surrounding landscape into a giant sponge soaked with moisture. Water levels in the soil and in the plants become so high that even the hottest embers go out the moment they touch these areas. Research by Dr. Emily Fairfax shows that vegetation in areas with beaver dams can be up to 3 times more fire-resistant than vegetation in places without them. While everything outside turns into a blazing furnace, inside the beaver's fortress, the air temperature can be between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius lower than the surrounding environment. These places quickly become the only shelters available to thousands of wild species, from deer and bears to all kinds of birds. They all instinctively move toward beaver dams in order to survive. At this point, this is no longer just a water restoration project. It has become a strategic defense system against climate change. Beavers are protecting what remains of ecosystems that human machinery can no longer save. That reality has caused a complete shift in the way people think. Imagine you are a farmer watching a wall of fire tens of meters high move closer and closer to the edge of your land. Would you trust a fire truck that is running out of water, or would you wish you had let a colony of beavers work in the stream behind your house for years? Today, hundreds of farmers and landowners in the United States have made a historic shift. They have gone from hunting and driving beavers away to protecting them and bringing them onto their land as if they were the most valuable bodyguards imaginable. They have realized that one beaver colony can sometimes be worth more than an entire professional security team. But this has also triggered a fierce debate. Depending on a rodent to protect your property, is that a sign of intelligence? Or is it a bitter confession that human technology has had to surrender to the wisdom of nature? Just look at the Price River in Utah. Only a few years ago, that place was nothing more than a dry trench filled with sand and loose stones, with not a single tree in sight. But the arrival of the beaver warriors completely reversed the fate of that land, turning its future into something nobody would have dared to imagine. What used to be a lonely erosion scar has now become a maze of emerald green waterways winding between sandstone cliffs. The change is so dramatic that you can clearly see a bright green stripe cutting the desert in half, even from satellite images taken from space. This is not the result of a multi-billion-dollar irrigation project. It is the work of some of the most brilliant biological minds on the planet. And the truly astonishing part is that beavers did not just bring the water back. They brought an entire economy back with it. Once water becomes stable, vegetation flourishes, and salmon species begin to return. Ecotourism, sport fishing, and especially livestock farming in Utah are now seeing unprecedented growth. Farms that once seemed doomed by drought now have steady irrigation water all year long, thanks to the dam systems upstream. The role of beavers has become so important that the government of Utah, during the period from 2023 to 2024, passed new laws designed to officially protect the species. Once viewed as pests or as threats to canals and irrigation systems, beavers are now officially recognized as strategic partners in the government's water security agenda. It is a late recognition, but an extremely valuable one for the contributions of these four-legged engineers. Today, the Price River stands as living proof of a paradox. The harder humans try to control water with concrete and steel, the more we fail. But when we step back and make room for the true experts with muddy feet, miracles start to happen. Beavers accomplished what giant hydroelectric dams worth hundreds of millions of dollars could not create: a sustainable ecosystem, self-running, self-repairing, and not costing a single cent of public budget. Even so, this rebirth has not come with total agreement. A heated argument is now breaking out across Western cities. When beavers do their job well, water levels rise, and water does not care whether it is flooding wild grassland or human construction. Beaver dams have started flooding major roads and damaging ornamental gardens worth millions of dollars belonging to wealthy landowners in the desert. That is where the tension reaches its highest point. On one side, you have the survival of an entire ecosystem and the stability of the water supply for millions of people. On the other side, you have private property rights. Is humanity willing to sacrifice a few roads or a few gardens in order to save an entire continent that is dying of thirst? Many people argue that releasing hundreds of beavers into the desert is a rough and risky intervention, a biological experiment full of danger. But if we look back at what humans have done to rivers over the last 150 years, who is really the greater destroyer? Has the time come for humanity to step back and give up some control of the planet to creatures that may actually know how to save it? Which side are you on in this conflict? Do you trust the progress of technology and concrete, or do you believe in the astonishing restorative power of nature? The battle in the Utah desert is still going on. The beavers are still working without pause, chewing wood, piling up mud, and raising dams under the burning sun. They do not care about human debates. They are simply doing their job, saving the world, one drop at a time.